The door slams shut behind you. The air smells of oil lamps and sweat. A man's voice echoes, Latin words you don't understand. But you know their meaning. You are not a guest here. You are property. Your wrists ache from the iron shackles. Your hair is yanked back as you're inspected, priced, and judged like cattle at a market. To the Romans, you are not a woman. You are an object, and your future depends entirely on the whims of your master. But this wasn't a nightmare. This was reality for millions of women. And to understand how you ended up here, we need to step back and see the world that made this possible. Because Rome, the empire of marble, of emperors, of gods and legions, was also an empire built on human bodies. And for women, that burden was the heaviest of all. Rome was built on slavery. Millions of men, women, and children owned, traded, discarded. But for women, slavery was something far darker. You weren't just a servant. You were a cook, a nurse, a nanny, and too often a body forced into silence. Your owner could strip away not just your freedom, but your dignity, your family, and even your name. Some female slaves raised the children of wealthy Roman households, pouring love into babies that were not their own, while their own children were taken away and sold. Others were forced into prostitution in Rome's brothels, their lives measured in coins dropped on a counter. And the cruelest part, the law offered you no protection. If your master wanted to beat you, humiliate you, or sell you, Rome would look the other way. And so law was not a shield, it was the master's sword. For the women trapped beneath it, survival meant endurance, and that endurance was tested every single day. And the day begins in darkness. Not the soft darkness of rest, but the kind that smothers you, broken only by the creak of doors and the bark of commands. A hand shakes you awake. There is no choice, you rise. The straw clings to your tunic, your body stiff from a night spent on the cold floor. You've learned not to stretch, not to yawn. A slave does not show fatigue. A slave moves. Always. The body obeys before the mind can wander because hesitation is dangerous. And so her day begins, not with choice, not with rest, but with fire. The kitchen fire must be stoked before dawn. Your hands plunge into ash and cinders, skin cracking from heat and soot. The villa stirs slowly, but you are already drenched in sweat, racing to prepare bread from coarse flour to fetch water from the cistern before others rise. The smell of smoke, the scrape of pots, the orders hissed in the half-light. These are the sounds of your morning. If you serve in a wealthy household, you might be assigned to the mistress's chamber. You open shutters to let in the Roman sun, polish her bronze mirror, brush and braid her hair while she gazes at her reflection as if you were invisible. A wrong tug, a broken comb, even a glance that lingers too long and her hand might strike your face. For her, you are an extension of the furniture, useful when silent, disposable when flawed. But the work does not pause. The villa must gleam like marble temples, or shame falls on the household and punishment falls on you. Floors are swept, mosaics scrubbed, linens washed in streams until your fingers bleed. The family's children cry, and it is your arms that rock them, not their mothers. You whisper lullabies in a language they do not know, songs from a homeland you barely remember. The child clutches your finger, calling you mama, a word that cuts deep because somewhere, perhaps far away, your own child may already be calling another woman the same. Rome robbed you not only of freedom but of blood. Female slaves bore children who were not theirs to keep. The law decreed that any child born from a slave woman was itself a slave, property from the first breath. Some mothers had their babies torn from them at birth, sold to strangers before they even nursed. Others were forced to raise Roman children as their own, pouring love into infants who would grow up to inherit the power that kept them chained. And mistakes are not forgiven. Drop a dish, spill wine on a guest's toga, burn bread, and the punishment comes swift. A whip's crack in the courtyard, a mistress ordering you to kneel as guests laugh. Some women were branded with iron on their foreheads, letters seared into their flesh so all would know: runaway, thief, whore. Imagine the humiliation of carrying your punishment not for a day but for life. No ointment, no cloth could hide it. The mark walked before you, speaking louder than your voice ever could. And punishment wasn't always about discipline. Sometimes it was about control. A master, displeased by nothing more than a sour mood, could summon a slave girl and order her beaten simply to remind others of their place. It was terror as a tool, a performance designed to silence rebellion before it began. Terror was not just punishment, it was routine. And as the hours dragged on, routine itself became another chain. By midday, the weight of labor was joined by a deeper fear, because for female slaves, the body itself was never safe. Roman law gave masters the right of use, and women were often forced into concubinage or prostitution. Brothels teemed with those who had no choice, their worth calculated in coins tossed across a counter. In taverns, soldiers and sailors sought relief, and it was slave girls who bore the cost. Their bodies became the currency that sustained Rome's appetites. And in the villa, the danger was constant. A passing glance from the master could turn into a command. Refusal was unthinkable. Resistance meant punishment or death. Many women bore children this way, not from love, not from choice, but from ownership. Each child bound tighter the chain of slavery, for by law they too became property. For a woman, survival meant silence, and silence meant the erasure of self. But not every woman served in marble halls. Some were sent to the fields, working beneath the brutal Mediterranean sun, bent double for hours, hauling baskets heavier than their bodies, their hands blistered and raw. The fields demanded strength until the body broke, and when it broke, replacements were easy to find. Worse still were the mines. Few survived long in those choking tunnels, lungs filling with dust, bodies collapsing under the strain. For a female slave sent there, it was a slow death sentence, her face fading into darkness before Rome even remembered her name. And yet, survival sometimes meant grasping at whatever fragments of favor could be found. A clever word, a kind gesture, a talent for music or storytelling. These could earn a slave a place closer to the household's inner circle. A concubine who pleased her master might find herself dressed in finer cloth, eating better meals, even dreaming of manumission, the precious gift of freedom. Others rose through trust. A nurse who raised Roman children could wield influence within a household, shaping the future of those who would one day rule. A manager of shops or estates could command men, hold accounts, and appear powerful. But this power was brittle, always at the mercy of a master's whim. One misstep, one rumor, and the fall back into obscurity was swift and merciless. Power never lasted. Fortune always turned. And when the day's illusions faded, night arrived. Not with peace, but with another cycle of demands. When night finally fell, there was no promise of rest. The master might summon you. The mistress might scold you. A sick child might cry through the night, and it was your arms that bore him until dawn. If you found yourself awake, staring into the ceiling's shadows, the thought gnawed at you. How many years would this cycle repeat? Would you live long enough to see freedom? Or would your story end in silence, forgotten beneath the empire's marble glow? This was the life of a female slave in Rome, a war fought not with swords but with endurance. Every day was a battle for survival. Every gesture was calculated. Every word was measured. And every night ended the same way, with the weight of tomorrow pressing down before it even began. Yet even within this endless grind, life did not move in straight lines. For some, the chain loosened, if only for a moment. For others, it tightened until they broke. It was in these sudden turns that the cruelest truths of slavery revealed themselves. The life of a female slave in Rome was never a straight line of suffering. It bent, it twisted, it dangled hope only to snatch it away. And that was its cruelest trick, the contrast between despair and fragile glimpses of freedom. Imagine being chosen to raise your mistress's child. You feed him, sing him to sleep, guide his first steps. In his eyes, you are more mother than the woman who bore him. You begin to believe that bond could protect you, that affection might carve a place for you in the household. But then the mistress grows jealous. A single order and you are sold, ripped from the boy's arms. One day you are his world. The next you are gone, forgotten like you never existed. This was Rome's first twist. Devotion punished. Love turned into exile. Others seemed to rise. A concubine who caught her master's eye might dine at his table, wear fine silk, even whisper counsel into his ear. To outsiders, she appeared powerful, almost free. But this was an illusion. Her place was not hers, it belonged to his desire. The moment her beauty faded or a younger girl replaced her, the silks vanished. She fell harder than before, from mistress of the house to discarded servant. In Rome, elevation was not liberation. It was simply a higher perch before the fall. And when the perch collapsed, when favor turned to ash, only one thought remained: escape. Some dared to hope for more. They slipped into the night, hearts pounding with visions of freedom. For hours, even days, they ran, into hills, across fields, dreaming of life beyond chains. But when caught, the punishment was permanent. Branding irons seared the letter F into their foreheads. Fugitiva, runaway. The mark spoke louder than their own voice, a scar that chained them tighter than any shackle could. Freedom, once within reach, became the proof of their eternal bondage, and yet a handful broke the pattern. A freed woman who married her former master might live in comfort. Another skilled in trade could run a shop, command wealth, even own slaves herself. Some entered history's whispers, like women in the imperial palace who, once freed, wielded real influence. But these were exceptions so rare they became legends. Their stories did not inspire hope among the masses. They reminded every other slave of the cruel math. For every one woman who rose, tens of thousands remained in the shadows. To the slave, these rare stories of freedom were not salvation. They were reminders that the system itself thrived in contrast, dangling the dream while burying the reality. This was Rome's genius, not just the lash but the contradiction. A life of whiplash between fleeting hope and crushing despair. Affection one day, exile the next. Silks 1 year, rags the next. A dream of freedom twisted into a scar of shame. For a female slave, it was not pain alone that broke the spirit. It was the instability, the sense that fate could tilt at any moment and always against her. That was Rome's cruelty. Not the iron, not the whip, but the hope. But what broke a woman in Rome wasn't just the labor or the punishments or the constant fear of abuse. It was the uncertainty. Every day you woke up not knowing if you would serve wine, scrub floors, or be dragged into your master's bed. Every night you closed your eyes not knowing if tomorrow you would still be in this household, or sold to a stranger. That uncertainty gnawed away at the mind, leaving only one truth. You had no control over your own life. The law stripped female slaves of even the smallest protections. If a master killed a slave, Rome would barely blink. If a mistress suspected her husband favored a concubine, the slave could be whipped, humiliated, even mutilated without consequence. And so the greatest punishment was not always physical. It was the slow erosion of self, the sense that you were not a person, but a thing. We see glimpses of this despair in the voices of Rome itself. In the writings of Seneca, masters are advised to treat slaves with a measure of kindness, because cruelty only breeds rebellion. In legal records, we find cases of women branded on their faces, forced to carry the mark of shame forever. And in Petronius's Satyricon, a mistress boasts of beating her slave girl simply for laughing. These are not isolated tales, they are windows into daily brutality. But sometimes breaking meant fighting back. One story survives of a slave girl who poisoned her mistress after years of abuse. The punishment was swift and merciless. She was executed publicly. Her death meant to warn every other slave in Rome. Yet in that desperate act, we see the truth. Even at their breaking point, these women longed for agency, for even a single choice of their own. This was the silent war inside Rome's villas and streets. Some women endured, some submitted, some found fragile hope in favor or manumission. Others reached their breaking point and chose defiance even if it cost them their lives. And in their silence, their tears, and their final desperate acts, we catch a glimpse of the human cost behind Rome's marble glory. Rome remembers its emperors, its battles, its monuments, but the lives of women like her? Forgotten, buried in shadows. And yet, without them, the empire could not have stood for even a single day. If you believe these forgotten voices deserve to be heard, then stay with us. Subscribe, share, and help bring Rome's hidden truths back into the light. Because history was not just written by the victors, it was carried on the backs of the voiceless.